Hello guys, this is your friend and we are back with a new fanfic. Which is, what if Naruto was trained by Kurenai instead of Kakashi, part 1. And if you enjoy this fanfic then please press the like button and subscribe to my channel for more fanfic like this. And now let's start the fanfic. A 14-year-old Naruto Uzumaki stood in front of his sensei, Hitaki Kakashi in the middle of the hall at the hospital and said, Kakashi-sensei, I have a huge favor to ask you. Quote. Kakashi, who was reading his book, said, Stop right there. I know what you going to ask already, Naruto, and I'm sorry to say that I can't train you. Naruto eyes widen and he said, What, but? Quote. Kakashi said, I have other matters to attend to, but I have been searching for someone who can to train you who would do a better job than I could. Naruto frowned and said, But you're my sensei, Kakashi-sensei. Who could train me better than you? A voice from behind Naruto said, Well, I don't know if I could do it better than Kakashi could teach you, but I wouldn't mind training you. Both Naruto and Kakashi looked at where the voice came from and Naruto saw Kurenai Yuhi standing there in a few street. Eps behind her was Ebisu, who had also stopped walking in the direction Kakashi and Naruto were after hearing Kurenai say that, and Ebisu said, Excuse me for interrupting you, Yuhi-san, but I have already volunteered to teach Uzumaki-san. Quote. Kakashi said, Don't you already have a student in these exams, Kurenai? Wouldn't it be a different of interest for you? Kurenai bit her lip and looked around and motioned with her head toward the room next to where she was standing, and Kakashi said, Very well. Wait here, Naruto. Kurenai shook her head and said, No, Kakashi. He has a right to know why I am wanting to train his, since it is his training. I don't mind him hearing why I want to train him, but I just don't want it to be common knowledge until after the exams. Quote. Kakashi frowned behind his mask and Naruto said, She's right, sensei. It is my training and she is way better than closet pervert there. Kurenai asked, Closet pervert? Ebisu waved his hand and said, It's nothing, Yuhi-san. Quote. Kakashi said, Well, if you insist then let's hear why you want to train Naruto and in what, as he motioned toward the room. Once everyone was in the room with the door closed, all eyes turned to Kurenai, who took a deep breath and said, First, the reason I am not training Shino is his father has decided to train him in his clan jutsu for the exams. Kiba is also going to be training with his mother and sister during this month as well, since Hinata won't be able to train for the next 6 weeks. Now that leaves me free until after the exams, but that doesn't explain why I want to train Naruto. Kurenai took a moment to gather her thoughts and said, The reason I wish to train Naruto is I fear for the life of my student Hinata. Quote. Naruto asked, Hinata, is she going to be okay? Is it because of that jerk Neji? And Kurenai said, It's not Neji, at least not directly. You see, Neji is a member of the branch family of the Hyuga clan and Hinata is the main branch. I have reason to suspect that since Hinata is not what the main branch wishes she was for the heiress of the Hyuga clan, that they will use her defeat to Neji as an excuse to put her in the branch house and will put the cage bird seal on her, which at her age could kill her. They can't touch her until after the exams though, because she is under medical care right now due to the damage to her heart from Neji attack. That is the first reason I wish to train Naruto. Naruto asked, What's the cage bird seal? Quote. Kurenai said, It's basically a slavery seal. It's supposed to protect the Hyuga clan from having their bloodline stolen, but the main house uses it to control the branch house. They make a single hand sign and cause a person who has the seal to feel extreme pain or even die from it. Quote. Naruto frowned and asked, How does you training me help Hinata? Kurenai said, I can train you to defeat Neji. I know most of the strengths and weaknesses of the Hyuga clan bloodline, and if you defeat Neji after my training then I can go to Hinata father and tell him that it is his own rule. About not allowing Hinata to learn anything outside of the Hyuga clan jutsu that lead to her defeat to Neji, while Neji's training in things outside of the Hyuga clan jutsu is what lead to his victory over Hinata. By you defeating him under my training, then that gives me grounds to help protect Hinata from being put in the branch house, as well as get me permission to teach Hinata things that the Hyuga clan forbid her from being taught because of their narrow-minded beliefs. Quote, Kakashi said, not that I don't feel sympathy for your student's situation, but exactly what is it that you could teach Naruto? Kurenai looked at Kakashi and said, Naruto's only opponent won't be just Neji. Everyone knows about his rivalry with his own teammate Sasuke. I also know how to fight a Sharingan user, not as good as some like yourself or Guy, but I do know enough to give him a chance of fighting against Sasuke and his Sharingan. I know of Ebisu here, he is great at teaching the basics, which is why he is allowed to train Konohamaru, but the basics isn't going to give him a chance to defeat Neji, and if he can't defeat Neji, then he won't ever even get a chance to fight Sasuke. My request to train Naruto is selfish, but I know I can give him the skills he needs to defeat Neji and a chance at Sasuke. Kakashi said, well, Naruto said, do it. Causing everyone to look at him. Kakashi said, what are you doing, Naruto? You need to think about this carefully. Naruto said, I am. You remember Haku and Zabuza, right, Kakashi-sensei? What you don't know is I met Haku once before that day on the bridge. He taught me a very important lesson that day. True strength comes from protecting that which is precious to you. I can see it in Kurenai-sensei's eyes that Hinata is precious to her. She's willing to do anything she can to protect her. And I may be a bit selfish as well, but what Neji did to Hinata was wrong. I don't know what it's like to have a family, but I don't believe what Neji did to Hinata is what family is supposed to do to each other. I want to defeat him more than I want to beat Sasuke. I doubt that I'll make Chunin, but I don't think I'm ready to be Chunin. A Chunin is supposed to be able to lead others. How can you lead when you are looking at the back of others? That snake guy in the forest. I wanted to make him pay for hurting Sasuke and Sakura. I killed 2 giant snake and used everything I had to fight him. He was able to beat me while holding me in the air with his tongue and a single punch to the stomach. I was knocked out for so long that when I woke up, Sakura hair had been cut. Team 10 was standing there along with Sasuke and Sakura, and Bushy Brows was on the ground and he looked knocked out while his teammates were in the trees around us. I don't know what happened while I was out, and I know I'm not the smartest, but even I know the only reason I am alive right now is because the others saved me. I owe Hinata the same thing. What kind of Hokage would I be if I wasn't willing to protect the people of Kohoa, no matter if they are my teammates or some weird girl who always passes out when she talks to me? I'll train under you, Kurenai-sensei, and I promise that I will defeat Neji to protect your precious person, and I don't go back on my word. That's my ninja way. Quote. Kurenai smiled and quickly moved forward, pulling Naruto into a hug with his face right between her as she said, thank you, Naruto. You don't know how much this means to me, thank you. As she hugged him tightly while moving him back and forward. A thud caught her attention as she noticed Ebisu was blown back with a nosebleed and a perverted smile on his face, while Kakashi raised his book a little higher and closer to his nose and thought, lucky bastard. And said, well, in that case, I am sorry for bothering you, Ebisu, and good luck, Naruto, and I hope you are happy with your decision. See ya. As he shushined away. Kurenai blinked a moment and then looked at Naruto, who was frozen in place in the valley between her, let go of Naruto and stepped back. And said, I'm sorry about that, Naruto. Naruto rubbed his head sheepishly with a blush on his face and said, no problem, Kurenai-sensei. Kurenai smiled gently and said, all right, Naruto. Do you have anything else you need to do before begin training? Quote. Naruto shook his head no, and Kurenai said, then sit down and tell me what skills you have so I know what you need trained on and what you don't. Naruto said, that makes sense. I know the Kujbunshin no Jutsu, Henge, replacement, cloak of invisibility, my no Jutsu, harem jutsu. I also know the tree climbing exercise Kakashi sensei taught us in Wave Country. Kurenai, who had a gentle smile on her face as Naruto started to speak, slowly pursed her lips and said, "Is that it?" Quote. Naruto rubbed the back of his head and said, "Yeah," with a sheepish grin. Kurenai said, "Did Kakashi teach you anything else or try to teach you anything else?" Naruto said, "Just teamwork." With a shrug. Kurenai frowned and said, "I see, well, we got our work cut out for us and only a month to get ready. Do you know where training ground 32 is?" Naruto blinked a moment and said, "Yeah, that's the one by the waterfall that flows into the Kuroku Lake. We had to get trash out of that stream." "Why?" Kurenai said, "Good, you know where I want you to go already. Meet me at the bottom of that waterfall in 1 hour and bring all your camping supplies and ninja equipment as well as all your cloths as well." Quote. Naruto frowned and said, "Why?" Kurenai said, "Because to keep your training a secret, you're not going to leave that area until your training is complete. I'm going to put you through hell during your training and force you past your breaking point in order for you to come out stronger than Veer. Now go, you only got 56 minutes left to get ready." Naruto's eyes widened and he quickly left the room, and Kurenai growled a moment before she looked at the tag she pulled off of Naruto's jacket and shushined away. After going to his apartment and grabbing all his ninja equipment and his cloths, Naruto had shoved them in his backpack and heading toward Ikiruka ramen stand to get some ramen. Naruto made it to the location Kurenai had told him to meet her and looked around and said, I guess I beat her here." Quote. A voice from behind him said, "You guess wrong." Startling Naruto as he jumped to his feet and turned and saw a shimmer in the air and saw Kurenai standing there with her arms crossed and said, "You're late." Quote. Naruto was wide-eyed and said, "That was cool, are you going to teach me that?" Kurenai said, "I don't know yet. What good is me teaching you something if you don't know how to defend against it? You must know yourself before you can know your enemy." Naruto looked confused and Kurenai said, "Is that all your cloths and ninja supplies?" Naruto nods and Kurenai said, "Let me see," as she held her hand out. Naruto hands her his bag and Kurenai opened it and looked at Naruto's supplies, and she grabbed his cloths and put them in one pile and then his weapons in another pile, with Naruto blushing when Kurenai giggled slightly as she pulled out his frog boxers, which she put in a separate pile. Kurenai said, "First lesson, stealth," as she flashed through a couple of hand signs and breathed a fireball into Naruto's cloths minus his boxers, causing Naruto's eyes to widen and he screamed, "No, my cloths. .. How could you?" as tears started to fall from his eyes. Kurenai pulled out a scroll and said, "Here is your new cloths." Naruto looked at the scroll and said, "What the hell am I supposed to do with that? Wrap it around me like bandages like you." Kurenai got defensive and said, "My cloths are not bandages, and don't you know anything about sealing?" Naruto frowned and Kurenai sighed and said, "Look, this isn't going to do either of us any good if we fight, so listen, inside this scroll is a street Andard storage seal. I got you some new cloths that will not only make you look more professional but also some other supplies that will help. Just take this behind a tree and channel chakra into the seal and out will pop out your new supplies. Now go, you're wasting both our time." Naruto took the scroll and said, "No peeking, lady," as he walked behind a tree, and Kurenai blushed and thought, that was so wrong. A few minutes later Naruto came back wearing a pair of black pants that had built-in weapon pouches, a fishnet shirt with a gray shirt over it. Kurenai said, "Good. I see I was right about your old cloths being too big for you. Now remember I told you that you must know yourself before you know your enemy, right?" Naruto nods and Kurenai said, "When you fought Kiba I saw you use your Kage Bunshin. What do you know about the Kage Bunshin no Jutsu?" Naruto blinked and said, "The Kage Bunshin no Jutsu is a jutsu that is in the Forbidden Scroll. It makes solid clones that can only take one hit before dispelling." Quote. Kurenai said, "Is that it?" Naruto nods and Kurenai thought, "Lazy bastard," and said, "The Kage Bunshin no Jutsu divides the chakra of the user evenly between himself and each clone you make. That is part of the reason it is in the Forbidden Scroll. If a person uses it too much or stupidly, it could cause them to die of chakra exhaustion, causing Naruto to pale slightly and said, "But I use it all the time with no problem." Kurenai said, "That is mostly because of that. Now I said the chakra problem was only part of the reason it was a kinjutsu. The other reason is because whatever a Kage Bunshin learns is transferred back to you and any other Kage Bunshin you created when dispelled. That makes it a great jutsu for scouting." Naruto eyes widen and said, "Really? But..." Kurenai held up her hand and said, "Let me finish. Now, I can tell you didn't know this before, and that means that all this time you could have been making great strides in becoming a better ninja has been wasted because you didn't know yourself." Naruto frowned as he heard that and thought, "Did I really just waste all this time so far? Why didn't anyone tell me?" Kurenai, seeing the look on Naruto's face, said, "Assumption is the biggest mistake people can make, Naruto. I bet nobody told you about that before because they figured you'd read about it when you took the Forbidden Scroll." Naruto looked down and Kurenai said, "But we can work on correcting that mistake now, so watch." As she walked out onto the water near the waterfall and said, "This is also a chakra control exercise like the tree climbing exercise. Too much chakra and you will blow off, not enough and you will sink. What I want you to do is use what you think is half your chakra to make as many Kajibunshins as you can and have them begin to practice this exercise." Stop. Causing Naruto to stop before he could finish putting his hands together. Kurenai said, "Wait until I finish speaking before you make them. Now your Kage Bunshin will know what you know, so when you make them already have your plan in your head. What I want them to do is form a line before trying this exercise. I want them to start with trying only one foot first while keeping one on dry land. Once they can stand on the foot on the water without sinking, then the first clone to actually do it is to dispel, so the other clones will learn what he knew as well as you. Then they are to try with both feet. Again, when the first clone to stand on both feet without falling can do it, he is to dispel. After that, then I want them to practice walking across this stream. The first clone to walk across the stream and back again 10 times without falling is to dispel. After that, I want the Kage Bunshins to grab a leaf and try to do this. As she put a leaf on her left hand and start to channel chakra, causing the leaf to float. Naruto was wide-eyed and Kurenai said, "This is the leaf floating exercise. Too much chakra and the leaf will blow off, not enough and it won't move. When a clone can get it to float above your hand for 10 seconds, he is to dispel. Then the clones are to try and keep it there for 1 minute. After they can keep it there for a minute, that one is to dispel, and then the clones are to try the other hand, same rules for 10 seconds and then 1 minute. After that, both hands, 10 seconds, then a minute. After that, the clones are to try tree climbing with one leaf in one hand up and down the tree 10 times while floating the leaf. Then the other hand 10 times before floating the leaf, then both hands for 10 times. After that, same thing on water with one leaf on one hand for 10 times across and back, and then one leaf on the other hand 10 times across and back. After that, then I want any clones that are remaining to try to run up this waterfall using chakra one at a time until they're all gone. I don't expect you to get this done today, but I do expect you to have it done before the end of the week." Naruto nods and Kurenai said, "But the real you will be doing something else." Naruto said, "What will I be doing, Kurenai-sensei?" Quote, Kurenai walked behind a tree and came back out with a plastic bag and said, "In this bag is some rubber balls. I got them to help train Akamaru, but because of fear of him choking on them, Kiba would not let me use them. I am going to use them on you as target practice. I am going to throw these at you, but you are not allowed to move." Naruto's eyes widened and he started to say something when Kurenai said, "No arguing. You are not allowed to move because you are going to be using the replacement jutsu to move yours. I have 100 balls and will be throwing them at my full strength. If one hits you, then you will first have to collect each of the balls and then do one sit-up and one push-up for however many balls are still in the bag before starting all over again with dodging. We will do this until you can dodge the entire bag of balls. Now create your cage shins, it's time to train. Naruto nods and put his hands together and said, Kujbunshin no Jutsu. Kurenai's eyes widen as nearly 200 cage shin appeared and thought, holy shit, how much chakra does he have? Quote. Shaking herself out of her though Kurenai saw the clones were starting to practice and she smirked before throwing a ball at Naruto nailing him in the nods and Kurenai said, 99 sit-ups and push-ups Naruto. Quote. Naruto grumbled as he rubbed his nose and began to do as told. Several hours later Naruto was groaning on the ground and Kurenai said, that's good for now Naruto. I'm surprised your clones are still going. Now I want you to gather firewood and I'll be back in an hour with food. Keep your clones going until they are all gone or out of chakra. You just rest after getting the wood though. See ya in an hour. By the way, good job so far. Quote. Naruto groaned and said, why is it always my nose? As he stood up slowly. Kurenai giggled and walked over and said, because your body is sore enough already from first your battle with Kiba this morning and using so much chakra. But here, this will make it feel better. I'm proud of you. As she kissed his forehead causing Naruto to go wide-eyed and blush. Kurenai giggled seeing this and said, now go. If you got time to blush you got time to train. As she shushined away. Naruto stood standing there for several minutes until the memory of one of his clones returned to him and he shook his head and began to gather firewood. When Kurenai returned she saw Naruto had started a fire already and was sitting by it and she saw the Kajibunshi had dropped drastically in numbers since she had left and thought, they must be running out of chakra finally. Naruto who was looking at the fire asked in a soft voice, why did you kiss me? Kurenai who was in thought judging Naruto clones blinked and said, what was that? I didn't catch it. Naruto still looking into the fire asked, why did you kiss me? Kurenai said, just a friendly gesture as thanks and gratitude for all the hard work you have been doing today and for helping me to protect my student. Naruto said, oh. Softly. Kurenai turned her head slightly and said, is something wrong Naruto? Naruto said, I guess not. I just never been kissed before by someone. Quote. Kurenai said, that's not true. You kissed Sasuke, remember? Naruto got a mortified look on his face and said, thanks, I thought I had repressed that memory, beside, that was an accident, the kid behind me caused it by knocking me into Sasuke so it doesn't count. Quote. Kurenai said, well don't worry about it. That kiss I gave you was just a simple gesture of gratitude, nothing more. Naruto said, Sensei, what is this training we are doing for? I mean, what good is it going to do me against Neji? Quote. Kurenai unsealed 2 takeout plates from a scroll and said, I guess that's a fair question. Think back to Neji and Hinata's fight, tell me what you saw, not what was said but what you saw each of them was able to do. I'll explain what this will do after you answer that question. Naruto looked in thought and said, well, Neji and Hinata both got those weird veins around their eyes, they were doing a lot of dodging and I think they were using chakra in their hands. Quote. Kurenai said, we will need to work on your observation skills sometime, but you are somewhat right if only barely. Those veins around their eyes showed that they were sending chakra to their eyes to activate their bloodline. When they activate their bloodline they can see nearly everything around them and can see longer distances and can also see through things including the human body so they can see the chakra inside a person body. Hyugas are very flexible which is why both were doing so much dodging because they could attack their targets from several different angles. They were also using chakra in their hands to seal off each other's chakra by blocking their enemy's chakra flow with their own chakra. Quote. Naruto said, but what does that have to do with anything? Kurenai said, Neji is very fast and flexible. He also has excellent control over his bloodline and being on an assault team under Guy I know his taijutsu is higher than your average Hyuga. I doubt he used his full strength in that battle and will most likely have several tricks up his sleeves for the finals. Neji also has experience on his side, having been a ninja longer than you or Hinata. Do you agree with me? Naruto thought hard for a minute and said, yeah, I guess so. Kurenai said, if you were to fight Neji right now, what would you do? Don't answer. Let me try and guess. You would use your Kajbunshin and try to overpower him with numbers, right? Quote. Naruto frowned and Kurenai said, that won't work. Watch. Hey, you Kajbunshins, come here a minute. Naruto watched as all his Kage-Bunshin that were left, which was only about 30, came over, and Kurenai said, alright, I want you to sit on the ground in a circle around me. Good. Now you see, I have about a 4 feet circle area I can still move. Your Kajbunshin couldn't all sit around me in one circle, so they had to form another one behind the first one. Your clones can only come so close to me without getting in each other's way, giving your enemy a chance to take them out, either by attacking them and with one punch destroy a clone, or by replacing himself with a log covered in exploding tags which would kill all these clones. Do you see what I am getting at? Naruto looked in thought and said, Neji would be able to use his speed, flexibility, and experience Aga. Inst my clones to take them out while they were all tied up trying to get to him. Kurenai said, exactly. Naruto got a worried look on his face and asked, then how am I going to be able to defeat him to save Hinata? Quote. Kurenai said, by increasing your chakra control you will be able to use your chakra better for more jutsu, and by mastering your jutsu like the replacement, you and your clones won't be getting hit as much, so you won't have to replace them as much. That is what I am teaching you right today. Now the real you eat up and all the Kage-Bunshin go back doing what you were doing before. After you eat Naruto, I'm going to tell you about some of the battle situations I have found myself in, and I want you to tell me what you would have done in those situations. Alright, Naruto said. Hi sensei. As he took the plate from her and began to eat while the Kage-Bunshin went back to training. After Naruto finished eating, he said, Sensei, I think there is something wrong with my chakra. Quote. Kurenai asked, what do you mean? Naruto said, well, one of my Kage-Bunshin decided to get ahead of the others and tried to do the tree climbing with the leaf floating while the others are trying to get water walking with both leaves, and well, it was like I never even done the tree climbing exercise before, even though I learned to get up the tree and wave. Kurenai frowned and looked in thought and said, Naruto, how often do you practice the tree climbing exercise since you first learned it? Quote. Naruto frowned and said, none. Why? Kurenai said, Naruto, for normal ninja, chakra control exercises should be done a couple of times a week. You though don't fall in that category. Naruto bit his lip and asked, do you hate me for Kyuubi? As he looked away nervously. Kurenai smiled gently and said, no Naruto. I saw the Kyuubi when it attacked and I can tell the difference between you and him. You are nothing like the fox. Naruto smiled a small smile and said, thanks Kurenai sensei. Kurenai said, your control could have just slipped from not practicing it enough to compensate for your reserves growing. You really should have at least 50 Kage-Bunshin every day. Practice some form of chakra control for you to keep it in good shape. Did you finish the water walking exercise I told you clones to do? Naruto thought a moment and screamed, hey, Sensei wanted us to do them in a CERTIAN order. No cheating, get back to work you bastards. The next morning Naruto woke up to a bucket of water being poured on his head, causing him to sputter and scream, what the hell sensei? Quote. Kurenai said, I have tried to wake you up for the last 10 minutes. Breakfast is ready. Naruto grumbled quietly to himself and grabbed the plate that Kurenai was offering and began to eat and said with his mouth full, what are we doing today? Quote. Kurenai frowned and said, first, don't talk with your mouth full, it's disgusting. Second, tell me what your clones got done yesterday. Naruto thought a moment and made sure his mouth was empty and said, they got the regular water walking down and got the leaf floating exercise down with both hands, but they tried to do the leaf floating with water walking or tree climbing and they didn't get more than a couple of feet before all dispelled or ran out of chakra. Kurenai said, then same as yesterday, Create your cage shins and have them practice on chakra control while you practice. Dodging my throws, but today instead of me standing in one spot throwing them at you, I will be attacking from different locations. We will stop at noon and I'll go get lunch while your clones continue to work and you will sit here and rest until I return. Quote. Naruto bit his lip and said, "Last night you didn't exactly tell me what exactly is this training going to do." Kurenai sighed and said, "Naruto, I'm not going to lie to you, so I'll just be blunt. There is no way between now and the finals you can get fast enough to get inside of Neji guard to attack him unless you're willing to take a lot of damage that could cost you the match. There is also no way you can get enough flexibility to outmove him either in less than a month. What I am hoping to do is to take an experimental jutsu I created for when I spar with Hinata to keep from having my chakra shut off and have you take it to the next level. A lot of the work will have to be done by you to figure out the best way to use it for you. I could tell you everything I know about the Hyuga, Thier fighting style, and Thier bloodline and then let you figure out your own way." Naruto frowned and said, "So you don't have some kick jutsu that will instantly let me win against Neji?" Quote. Kurenai said, "No. All I have is my own experience and that jutsu I mentioned that lets me reduce the damage I take from Hinata when I spar with her. If you want to cancel our agreement and find you someone better, I'll understand." Naruto said, "Why would I do that? You have taught me more in a few hours than Kakashi-sensei has in 6 months. It would be cool if you had a one-hit code jutsu that would let me instantly win. But I learned a lot of things on that mission to Wave. Things are not what you always believe they are. An enemy today could be an ally tomorrow. Teamwork can overpower a stronger enemy. The most dangerous weapon a ninja has is their mind. Emos come in all sizes. Dot and Senbon needles hurt like a bitch." Kurenai laughed at the last one and said, "Sounds like that mission was very interesting." Naruto smiled softly and said, "Yeah, hey, sensei. I got a question." Quote. Kurenai said, "I hope I can answer it for you." "What is it?" Naruto said, "Well, Iruka-sensei was always yelling at me about my no jutsu." Kurenai pursed her lips and said, "I can understand why. That henge is degrading to women." Naruto frowned and said, "But it's not a henge." Kurenai blinked and said, "What do you mean?" Naruto said, "Well, I got an idea in the middle of battle with Zabuza. He had Kakashi-sensei trapped in this water prison jutsu and he was standing on top of a lake and had some water clones attacking us while he held the jutsu. I got the idea that if I could get close to him then I could free Kakashi-sensei, but since I couldn't walk on water like he could, I got the idea of flying over the water, so I created a couple of cage shins to help distract everyone and I used my no jutsu, but instead of imagining myself as a woman I imagined myself as a demon windmill shuriken and had my cage shin toss me to Sasuke, who actually threw me at Zabuza, who jumped over me, and once I passed him I released the jutsu and threw a kunai at his back, forcing him to defend himself and freed Kakashi-sensei. A henge isn't real. So how is it that Sasuke was able to throw me as a shuriken?" Quote. Kurenai blinked and said, "That, show me, turn yourself into a shuriken like you claim you did." Naruto put his hands together and was covered in smoke, and when it cleared, a demon windmill shuriken floated in the air a moment before falling to the ground with a thud. Kurenai's eyes widened and she bit her lip and put her hands together and said, "Release," before she walked over and picked up the shuriken. Tapping it a moment, she ran her finger along the edge and winced a moment as she cut her finger. Naruto released the jutsu and said, "Are you alright, sensei? I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you," in a worried tone. Kurenai said, That was amazing, Naruto. You said that is basically your no jutsu." Quote. Naruto nods and Kurenai said, "I wonder if it could be a bloodline." Naruto said, "No. I taught it to Konohamaru to help him knock out that closet pervert Ebisu." Kurenai frowned and said, "Well, don't teach it to anyone else. That jutsu with the GHT, hey Naruto. I just got a crazy idea." Create your Kage Bunshin and have them start training in chakra control and then use that jutsu to change into someone you met not from Konoha and not a ninja. You and I are going to see Hinata. Naruto said. Why can't I go like I am? Kurenai said. 3 reasons. The first is your training is supposed to be secret, the second reason is to see how long you can hold that jutsu, and the final reason is to see if anyone can tell it's not real or figure out how to dispel it as we walk through town. Naruto asked. But why do I need to see Hinata? I mean, shouldn't I be training also? Kurenai said. Well, Hinata might appreciate seeing you come and wish her a quick recovery, plus I want Hinata to try and use her bloodline to test my theory. Quote. Naruto shrugs and put his hands together, and when it cleared there stood Tazuna, who said, Call me Tazuna. I'm the bridge builder who was the client for Team 7 to wave. Kurenai nods and both began to head to town. 20 minutes later, as they approached the hospital, Sakura came out of the hospital looking down, but when she saw Kurenai and Tazuna she said, Hello Tazuna, what are you doing here? I thought you would be in wave with Tsunami and Inari. Quote. Tazuna said, Tsunami been jumping all over me about drinking so much at my age, and I promised her that I would come get a checkup from a doctor here in Konoha while I came to thank the Hokage for the great work that you and your team did protecting me and saving my country. So where is the other two, Sakura? Sakura said. I don't know, the nurse told me that Kakashi-sensei checked Sasuke out and I haven't seen Naruto yet. Tazuna said. Well, if you see them, tell them I said hello. This lovely lady here was kind enough to show me around so I can return home quicker. Shall we go, Kurenai-san? Kurenai, who was watching the exchange, said. Yes, let's go, Tazuna-san. It was good seeing you again, Sakura. Quote. Sakura said. You also, Kurenai-sensei. Hey, by the way, how is Hinata doing? Kurenai said. She was resting when I checked on her last night. I was going to check on her while Tazuna took care of his business. Well, I'm sorry to chat and run, but I must be going. Good day, Sakura. Sakura said. Same to you, sensei. As she turned and left. Once she was gone, Kurenai said. I must say you could make a very good infiltration expert, Naruto. What's wrong? As she saw Tazuna had a scowl on his face. Tazuna said. Kakashi-sensei, he abandoned me so he could train Sasuke privately. Kurenai bit her lip and said. That is only partially true. I'm not allowed to say, it's an S-rank secret, but I can tell you that Kakashi doesn't like what he had to do, but orders are orders. Tazuna pursed his lips and said. I see. It doesn't seem right though. Quote. Kurenai said. I know, but it had to be done considering the actual situation I'm not allowed to speak about. Anyways, we're here. As she knocked before slowly opening the door and saw Hinata asleep and blinked as there was another person in the room and said, Hiyashi-sama, I'm not disturbing am I? Hiyashi Hyuga looked up at Kurenai and said, No. I was just leaving. As he stood up and began to leave. As he got to the door he saw Tazuna and said, Who are you and what are you doing here? As he activated his bloodline. Tazuna said, I'm Tazuna, I'm just being shown around to the hospital to get a checkup so my daughter will get off my back about drinking, and this lady here was kind enough to show me here and said she would show me where to go to get my test as soon as she check ed on her student who was here. I don't mean to intrude on anyone's privacy. I'll just be on my way. Thank you again for your help, miss. I'll just ask a nurse or someone to show me where to go to get a checkup. Goodbye. As he turned and started to leave. Hiyashi said. Stop right there, Uzumaki. Tazuna froze in place while Kurenai was cursing in her head, and Hiyashi turned to Kurenai and said, What is the meaning of this? Deception, Yuahi. Kurenai started to say something when Tazuna said, Can we speak somewhere more private, sir, and I can explain? Hiyashi nods and motioned toward the room next to Hinata and Tazuna, and Kurenai walked in and Tazuna was covered in smoke, revealing the real Naruto, who said, Who are you exactly? Kurenai said, This is Hiyashi Hyuga-sama Naruto, he's Hinata father and the head of the Hyuga clan. Naruto face scrunched up as he looked at Hiashi and said, I see. I don't like you. Quote. Kurenai eyes widened and hissed, Naruto, show Hiashi-sama some respect. Naruto looked at her confused and said, why? Kurenai said, because he's. Naruto said, I know, the head of the Hyuga clan, Hinata father, and he's also one of the council members. I recognize him from one of the times I was brought into the council chambers after one of my pranks, but I don't see why he should be respected. Hiashi said, I should be respected because. Naruto said, I'm not talking to you. I'm talking to her. Interrupting Hiashi. Kurenai was shocked hearing Naruto say what he was saying to Hiashi face, and Hiashi said, if you do not stop this insolence I will. Quote. Naruto said, what? Put the cage bird seal on me like you do the branch house. Call me a failure, a weakling, attack me. Take a number. What makes you different than the people in the branch house? I heard the cage bird seal is supposed to be used to protect your clan's bloodline, then why doesn't everyone in your clan have it? Why only the branch house? Why have the seal design where it can be used to torture or kill the person who has it? What makes them different than you? Hiashi said, I don't have to answer to you. Naruto said, and I don't have to answer to you. You know I'm right. There is no difference between you and the branch house, you just want to cause pain and suffering while forcing someone to suck up to you and kiss you. To think, you're probably going to put it on your own daughter. Funny, Konoha hates Itachi Uchiha for killing his own family, but you're doing the same thing, bastard. Kurenai said, that's enough, Naruto. Forgive him, Hyuga-sama, he's. Hiashi said, right. Causing Kurenai eyes to widen and Naruto to blink. Hiashi sighed and said, I hate how things are in my clan, but there is nothing I can do. Quote. Naruto said, I thought you were the clan head. If you don't like it, change it. As if it was the simplest thing in the world. Hiashi said, I am the clan head, but I am also only one man against my clan elders, and I have to do what is best for my clan. Quote. Naruto frowned and started to walk toward the door, but when his hand reached the handle and said, if you can't change your entire clan by yourself, then change things for one person. That one person could then help you shoulder some of the load to help another. All it takes is teamwork and the desire to protect that which is precious to you. If you really care about your daughter and your family, then prove it. Kurenai sensei, since he saw through my jutsu, I should get back to training. Thank you for observing my testing of my new jutsu. Tell Hinata I said hi. As he walked out and closed the door. Hiashi looked at the now closed door and after a few minutes looked at Kurenai and asked, what was his purpose here earlier? What were you trying to do? Kurenai said, I wanted to check on Hinata to see how she was doing, as for what he looked like. I'll tell you if you can answer how you knew it was him first. Hiashi said, he has a unique chakra network that is way different than everyone else's that works Uru. That. I have seen it enough over the years to be able to recognize it, though that was the only way I could tell he wasn't him, and if it wasn't for my Byakugan then I wouldn't have even known. Kurenai nods and looked in thought and said, it was a test to find out the true extent of a jutsu he created that we all seem to have misjudged. You know his famous no jutsu. Hiashi frowned and said, I am aware of that henge, why? Kurenai said, it appears that it is not just a henge but an actual shapeshift. Quote. Hiashi eyes widened slightly and said, really, are you sure? Kurenai said, so far all the tests I've suggested seem to suggest that, though I don't know what all you can do to test something like this. Quote. Hiashi said, I see, are you training him for the finals? Kurenai looked at Hiashi and said, what could I teach him that would give him the advantage against your nephew? The only thing I've taught him is water walking to help him with his chakra control, since Kakashi taught him tree climb. Bing in the academy taught him the leaf balancing exercises. Other than that, all he is doing is reviewing his own jutsu inventory, trying to understand them better and to use them quicker, which is why when he showed that jutsu I started to tell him how degrading it was to women when he informed me. About how he used it on a mission his team took that piqued my interest, especially when he claimed that he was able to teach someone else how to do it, meaning it couldn't be a bloodline thing or because of that, which is why I told him to walk through town using it to see if anyone could detect it. ND how long it could be used. I have not done anything that could be considered stealing your clan's secrets or knowledge that I may have acquired by teaching your daughter. Just helping a student refine his own skills that he already has as well as chakra control. Anything else he comes up with is his own design. Hiyashi nods and said, very well. See that you don't. As he turned and walked toward the door. After he was gone, Kurenai let out a breath and a puff of smoke behind her drew her attention and saw Naruto sticking to the wall, and he said, wow, had actually worked. Kurenai turned her head to the side so fast someone might have thought that she had whiplash and said, what are you doing? Naruto said, ever heard the saying, if only I could be a fly on the wall? Quote. Kurenai blinked and her eyes got wide, realizing what he meant before she frowned and said, you were spying on me. Naruto said, no, I wanted to make sure that you weren't trying to trick me into failing the exams so that you could use that as a favor to protect Hinata. After Mizuki, can you blame me? Kurenai pursed her lips and said, do you have any idea how stupid what you have been pulling was? You could get us both as so much trouble. Naruto frowned and Kurenai saw this and sighed and said, we should go see Hinata and then get back to your training. Quote. Naruto nods and Kurenai said, but if you ever spy on me again, I'll quit training you in a heartbeat after making you experience kissing Sasuke over and over again. Naruto paled as he followed Kurenai into Hinata room, and Kurenai moved to Hinata bed and grabbed the clipboard and read it in. Frowned and said, they have sedated her to keep her from moving around to give her time to heal. I guess this was a waste of time. Naruto was looking at Hinata bed and remember her words during the exams, and after a moment said, Sensei. Does Hinata like me? Kurenai eyes widened slightly and she looked at Hinata and asked, why would you think that? Naruto bit his lip and walked over to the window and said, Sensei, can you keep a secret? Quote. Kurenai said, I believe so, why? Naruto said, I've noticed Hinata following me over the years, spying on me. Kurenai eyes widened and said, oh, why was she doing that? In a calm voice, acting like she didn't believe him. Naruto frowned hearing this and said, Sensei, please stop trying to deflect me. You know something and I can understand that you don't want to tell me, but I'm confused. Kurenai sighed and said, I can't tell you if she does or doesn't, Naruto. I won't betray your trust like I won't betray hers, but if what you said is true and you have seen her following you over the years, why have you never talked to her about it? Naruto looked down and said, at first. I thought that she was spying on me to rat me out for my pranks I was pulling, her to figure out how I was doing my pranks to do something herself and get me in trouble for her actions, considering how fast I was caught or blamed when I was younger. Quote. Kurenai thought, well, I guess I could see where he thought that. And said, you said it first. What changed? Naruto said, truthfully, it wasn't until the first part of the Chunin exam that my opinion of her changed. You see, Hinata was right next to me in the room we had that paper test. I didn't know any of the answers and I was getting a little worried, but Hinata surprised me and quietly offered me a chance to copy her paper. Quote. Kurenai eyes widened and said, she did? In surprise. Naruto nods and said, she shocked me, but I told her no thanks, that I would pass on my own. God, I wanted to slap myself after I said that. Kurenai said, well, you did get by it on your own. Naruto said, with a blank paper. Kurenai blinked and asked, what? Naruto turned to her and said, I passed with a blank paper. I didn't even write my name on the test paper. I bluffed my way through the test, even going so far as to stand up and scream at that Ibiki guy, telling him I would be Hokage even if I had to stay a genin forever. Kurenai shook her head and said, I can't believe you did that. Quote. Naruto bit his lip and said, the rest of the test after Hinata offered to let me cheat, I tried to figure out what she was up to, Was she trying to get me caught to eliminate me? Was she actually trying to help me? I just couldn't figure out what to think. And then when she was fighting Neji, when she was talking, she was quoting me, saying the words I said, like they were her source of strength. I don't know what to think anymore, sensei. I'm scared. Kurenai, who was watching Naruto, and asked him, why are you scared? Naruto looked down and said, because I don't know if her feelings for me are real or if they are just because she sees me as some kind of support. And I'm worried if she finds out about that if she did like me she would turn around and either hate me, or worse, fear me. Kurenai said, I think you're not putting enough faith in Hinata. She will be able to see the difference between you and that. Quote. Naruto bit his lip and said, I doubt it, sensei, but what if Hinata doesn't actually like me? What if Hinata is actually getting strength from me? Then what happens when I'm not there? She would become like a puppet with its strings cut. A person has to be strong enough to stand up for themselves first, because no matter how many times someone helped pick them up, the moment they let go to see you stand on your own, you will fall right back on the ground again. Quote. Kurenai said, don't you think that's a little harsh thinking? Naruto said, it's the lesson I learned from the people of Konoha. If I didn't pick myself back up every time I got knocked down, I wouldn't be here today. I would have quit long before I ever took my genin exam the first time, much less the third. Kurenai bit her lip and said, you didn't tell me why you told me what you did. Naruto said, because I can tell your care for Hinata. I can also tell that you want to be there as a pillar of support for her and always to protect her, but that's not possible. Either Hinata will eventually get promoted and moved away from you, or you will have to move on for some reason yourself. Sooner or later you will have to let go, and if Hinata doesn't know how to stand, she will fall and not get back up. I'm telling you so that you don't hate me when I have to break her heart by telling her I can't be with her, because I don't want someone I have to stand behind in my shadow of her in fro. NT of using me for support, I want someone who can stand beside me as an equal. Kurenai frowned and said, I see. Naruto saw the frown and said, you don't agree with me. What if you were in Hinata? Would you stand up for yourself when people turn on you for being a demon whore or demon lover? Would you be able to take what the world dishes out, or would you buckle under the weight of it? Ask yourself honestly, could Hinata do that, or would she collapse and never get back up? Is that fair to her or to me? Kurenai said, all right, you made your point. I can understand where you're coming from, but I don't think you should judge her without getting to know her. After all, isn't that what happened to you? Quote. Naruto frowned and looked at Hinata and said, I wish things could be different, but. Kurenai said, you don't have to explain it to me. I'm not the one who has to live with your decisions. Quote. Naruto said, maybe I should go. I'll go work on my chakra control until you show back up. Kurenai said, no, let your clones do that. You need to work on your body conditioning a little bit. Get in the water in the stream below the waterfall and start practicing your punches and kicks and jumps against the water. It's called resistance training, and it works on toning muscles as well as increasing strength and power without sacrificing flexibility. If your Kage Bunshin are able to complete all the Charka exercises, then switch the leaf for a small stone and repeat the process, going with getting more and more heavier things. I also want you to create 100 Kage Bunshin and have them try and hit you with the rubber ball one at a time. I want you to replace yourself with a Kage Bunshin that doesn't have a ball so that it takes the hit. When you are resting from resistance training, I've got something I've got to look into for the next few days, so your training will be your own until I can meet you. I want when we meet again for you to show me your improvement in using replacement as well as your chakra control and physical training. I also want you to come up with at least 5 complete battle strategies that can be used in battle against each person still in the exams with the current knowledge and skills you have. You're not going to be handed a victory on a silver platter, you're going to have to earn it. Quote. Naruto nods and said, is there anything else, Kurenai-sensei? Kurenai thought a moment and then took a look at Hinata and said, know yourself, Naruto. I want you to explore every possibility you can with all the jutsu you know. Quote. Naruto nods and Kurenai watched him leave and sighed to herself. Naruto after leaving the hospital frowned and thought, maybe you're right sensei, but I just don't want to be hurt by those who are supposed to love me. It scares me. Could my parents have been like Haku's dad? Could they have hated me for the Kyuubi and abandoned me? That's why I don't ask Gigi who they are now that I know about Kyuubi. Getting to the waterfall, Naruto began to take off his shirt and pants, not wanting to get them wet when he heard a noise behind him and turned around and blinked and said, "What are you doing here?" Hiyashi Hyuga came walking out of the woods and said, "I had thought over your words after you left and I had used my Byakugan to see where you were after I left Kurenai. I was surprised to hear the maturity of your words that you spoke to her about in my daughter's room. While not as educated as some of your peers, you are very good at reading people and have a high level of empathy for others. For that reason I want to tell you about why Neji did what he did to Hinata during the preliminaries and see if you can come up with a solution to a problem that has eluded me for years. Do you have time to listen to my story?" Quote. Naruto looked at Hiyashi and after a moment nods his head slowly. Hiyashi seeing the nod said, "It starts back when I was born. You see, Neji father was my twin brother. Since I was born first I was placed in the main house while my brother was placed in the branch house. The firstborn child of the main branch is always placed in the main house while any others become the branch house." Naruto said, "So the only difference between the two houses is which is born first." "That's stupid." Hiyashi said, "I will not go into why that is the way we do things. I will skip until right after the Kyuubi was sealed in you. Konoha had been weakened by the Kyuubi attack on our village. So much so that the Sandaime was afraid that other villages would take our weakened state as a chance to attack and destroy us. It was because of this decision that he revealed the secret of the Kyuubi being sealed in you to the general public, as well as making his decree that no one was to speak about your burden." Naruto eyes widened and said, "Why would he do that?" Hiyashi said, "Jinchuriki, that is what those who are like you called." Naruto said, "There are others like me, with demons sealed in them." Quote. Hiyashi blinked and said, "I was under the impression that you already knew this." Naruto frowned and said, "Well, I didn't learn about it until what happened with Mizuki. I figure since you're on the council you know all about that event." Quote. Hiyashi nods and Naruto said, "Well, after that Iruka-sensei and Gigi made sure I realized I wasn't the Kyuubi and Gigi told me about his law and that he wanted me to have a normal childhood as best as he could. But anything else he might have been willing to tell me that night I didn't really want to talk about because, well, it raises a lot of questions on a personal level one don't want to go into about." Hiyashi thought a moment and said, "Your parents?" Naruto eyes widened slightly and looked at Hiyashi, who after a moment said, "Yes, I know of them, or at least who I suspect were your parents. If my guess is accurate then I can tell you that your father died the day you were born fighting Kyuubi and I believe your mother passed away giving birth to you, though I can't be for sure, but I believe that my opinion would be correct." Naruto eyes widened and said, "Can you?" Hiyashi said, "No. Information is power, and power comes at a price. The information on who I suspect is your parents would not only cause me great trouble should it be discovered that I told you what I suspect, but also put you and Konoha in great danger, something I cannot allow without real proof." Quote. Naruto frowned and looked down and said, "Can you at least tell me, were they good people and would they have loved me?" Hiyashi thought a moment and said, "Yes to both." Naruto smiled and said, "Then that is all I need to know. For that I will do my best to help you with your problem. So what is your story?" Hiyashi thought as he saw a small change in Naruto. Was it really that simple of an answer to make him happy? "I suppose with the hardship of life knowing that you are loved, even by the dead when you did not know before would give you strength. Perhaps that is where I have gone wrong all these years as a father." As he said, "Very well. About 3 months after the Kyuubi attack, Kumo decided that since Konoha was damaged as badly as we were, as well as the fact winter came early causing our resources to reach our limit, that it would be a good time to attack Konoha, and war started. Naruto was listening, said, "So my sacrifice was for nothing then?" Hiashi said, "No, your sacrifice saved Konoha, because without the delay you gave us, then Konoha would have been destroyed and more villages would have added CKEDs besides Kumo." Naruto sighed and said, "Then I guess I can accept that." Hiashi said, "I will skip until Hinata's third birthday." Kumo had declared they wished to end the war and sent several ninja as well as one of their top Junin to come sign the peace treaty. It was a day of great joy in the village, but the Hyuga clan did not go because, as I said, it was Hinata's third birthday. That night a masked individual broke into our clan compound and kidnapped Hinata. As he was making his escape with her, I discovered him and killed him to rescue my daughter. The masked kidnapper was the Kumo Junin who signed the peace treaty. Naruto's eyes had widened as he heard this, and Hiashi said, "Kumo said that Konoha did not want peace and only wanted a chance to kill one of their top ninja and wanted the head of the man who killed their Junin, me." Naruto asked, "But what does this have to do with anything?" Hiashi said, "My brother, he was killed in my place since he was my identical twin. He was Neji's father." Naruto thought a moment and said, "So Neji blames Hinata for his father's death because his dad took your place, that is why he did what he did in the exams." Hiashi nods and Naruto said, "Neji a idiot." Quote. Hiashi eyes widened and said, "How dare you say that?" Naruto interrupted him and said, "Blames an innocent 3-year-old girl who could not defend herself against a Junin-level enemy ninja. No offense Hiashi, but I can't respect Neji or feel sympathy for him, because if I did, then that would be like me saying that it's alright for me to kill everyone in Konoha who made my life bad because of the Kyuubi. The people didn't choose for me to have the Kyuubi in me, and I didn't choose it, just like Hinata didn't choose to get kidnapped and Hinata didn't choose for her uncle to take your place either. What Neji did was a disgrace to everything I believe in and what I believe all the Hokage believed in. Hinata was not only a fellow Konoha ninja, she was also his family. My sensei says those who don't follow the rules are trash, but those who abandon their comrades are worse than trash. I also believe that true strength comes from protecting that which is precious to you, and I believe that family is the most precious thing there is. The people of Konoha are family, and as ninja of Konoha we are tasked with protecting them with everything we have. Neji is a disgrace in my eyes. I will not only kick his, but I'm going to show him exactly how wrong he is." Hiashi pursed his lips as his face went neutral and said, "Goodbye," as he turned and left. After Hiashi left, Naruto turned to go back to the river to begin training when a female voice said, "You know, I think that was the most emotional I have ever seen him." Naruto turned to his right and saw Kurenai standing on a tree limb, and Naruto said, "How long have you been there, sensei?" Quote. Kurenai said, "Long enough. Naruto, I know you believe that if you believe in yourself that anything is possible, and you have enough conviction to make others believe in you also, but if you don't have the skills to back up your beliefs and convictions, then you will end up looking like AF. Ooh, have you thought about how you're going to pull off not only a victory against Neji, but now you go and claim you're going to show him the error of his way? Something his uncle, clan head, couldn't even do. I don't know if you realize it, but you're putting your dream of one day becoming Hokage on the line here. If you fail to keep your word to Hiashi now, then how will he be able to trust you if you ever get the chance to become Hokage? Every action has a reaction, Naruto. You need to realize that, or you will get caught in a trap and die or cost yourself and your teammates their lives." Naruto frowned and looked down, and Kurenai said, "I'm sorry Naruto, I shouldn't be so hard on you, but…" Quote. Naruto said, "No, you're right. I know I'm an idiot, sensei. I make a lot of mistakes, but I don't know how to do things any other way than the way I do," as he still was looking down. Kurenai bit her lip and said, "Naruto. How hard are you willing to work to have people actually look up to you as a possible Hokage one day?" Naruto looked up at Kurenai directly into her eyes and said, I'll die to reach my goal. Kurenai looked for any sign of doubt and found only conviction and said, I had came back to check on you one last time before I started doing what I got to go do, but if that is the way you feel then the current training isn't going to be enough. I'm going to call in a couple of favors from a couple of friends. You are going to hate me by the end of this month but you will be thankful as well. Now get back to training like I told you and when I return I won't be alone. And Naruto, keep your cloths on, the cloths while wet will make you weigh more and help add to your resistance training. Naruto swallowed as he saw the look on Kurenai's face and thought, what have I gotten myself into? Quote, Naruto stood in front of a mirror in his apartment and thought, let's see what the world thinks of the Yurei no Konoha, ghost of Konoha, before he disappeared in a swirl of leaves. The Chunin exam stadium was full of people waiting for the exams to begin. Down below in the stadium all the competitors were there except Dosu, Sasuke, and Naruto. A swirl of leaves appeared in the middle of the stadium catching everyone's attention and a figure wearing solid white combat boots, white pants with built-in holsters, a white shirt, with white fishnet wound. Underneath it, a white Chunin-style vest with several white scrolls on the pocket of the scrolls, a white cloak with a built-on hood that was pulled up over the head of the person who had arrived. Murmurs broke out in the crowd as everyone saw the figure arrive including the Sandaime Hokage and the Yondaime Kazekage. Genma, the proctor of the exams looked at the new arrival and tensed a moment and said, and you are? The person who would completely shadow the face of the person who had arrived said, Naruto Uzumaki, the Yurei no Konoha. Quote, several eyes widened as they heard who it was that had arrived and even more murmurs broke out in the crowd as everyone looked at Naruto including the other competitors. Genma getting over his shock said, get in line with the others and stand at attention everyone. The Chunin exams are about to begin. Naruto walked over and stood next to Shikamaru who glanced at Naruto and said, troublesome. Genma cleared his throat and said loudly, now if I can have everyone's attention, the semi-annual Chunin exams are about to begin. My name is Genma and I am the proctor for this part of the exam. It will be a one-on-one battle. The rules are the same as the preliminary round. You will fight until a person quits, knocked out, dies, or until I call the match. There is no room for arguments. Now everyone look at this as there have been some changes in the order of battles. As he pulled out a piece of paper and showed it to everyone and Shikamaru thought, my matches have changed. Quote, Genma said, now that everyone has seen the changes would everyone but Naruto Uzumaki and Neji Hyuga please leave the arena floor so we may begin. Shikamaru said, good luck Naruto. As he turned and followed after the three sand ninjas and Shino. Neji who was looking at Naruto said, you look like you have something you wish to say. Naruto reached up and pulled his hood back over his head and said, just one. As he pulled out a book and held it up to his face and said, if you want any chance to defeat me then you need to come at me with the intent to kill because you will not be able to defeat me otherwise. Neji scoffed and said, Proctor, start this match so this loser can learn that no one can defy fate and a loser like him will always be a loser. Quote, Genma said, the first match of the Chunin exams is between Naruto Uzumaki and Neji Hyuga. Ready? Begin. Neji activated his bloodline and said, prepare to lose. Naruto who was still reading his book said, you say something. Quote, up in the stands Sakura slapped her forehead and thought, Naruto copying Kakashi sensei. Several others were also deadpanning as they heard this. Neji activated his Byakugan and began to charge toward Naruto but when he got within 15 feet of Naruto a small explosion detonated right in front of Neji knee causing Neji to stumble and scream out in pain and shock. Naruto who was